All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to watch. We have a special feature today. We'll be talking with our resident here, John Marley, and he's going to share some of his sports history with us, some of the highlights from his sports history. So a lot of this I'll be finding out for the first time as well. So we're just going to kind of find this out together. We know this coming up on Father's Day weekend, and we're looking at the Take Me Out to the Ball Game, kind of a theme that we're doing. And so that's kind of, we thought this would be a great way to tie in for that. So let's dive in. Hey, John.
Hi.
Thanks for being here and taking some time to talk to me today. I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate being here.
I'm a big sports fan, so when Connie talked to me about that, I thought, well, it would be a great chance for me to kind of
I
find out
thought you were the baseball player.
Well, not the player. Well, I played like Little League and stuff growing up, but I stopped past I couldn't hit. I was all field and no hit, so that was my problem.
Oh yeah.
I was great at getting on. I was great at stealing bases. I was very fast. I was good defensively, but not good hitting. And so the problem is you can't do anything with your speed unless you can get on base. So that was my
Well, I
problem.
started out in baseball,
Right.
and we started out with a limb from a tree and a ball that was done up by the people in the textile mill town I lived in
Now-
Franklinville, and I started throwing that with the tape around it until I got into the high school.
Yeah.
And in high school, I pitched balls like once a week, but I was involved in 3 sports.
Okay.
And football was one of them, but I was in the town next door to me because we didn't have football in our school.
Okay.
And they agreed to let us play over there. So I was a tight end in football and a quarterback at times because I could throw the ball longer than anybody.
Right.
So after 2 years, when I got to the sophomore year, we had a new coach come into the high school, and he didn't want me to play football. He's afraid I'd get injured because he wanted to use me in the basketball and baseball in my school.
Okay.
And they had these sports writers were around, and I was growing a little fast at the time.
I was going to ask you now. I don't know if everybody can tell. You're a tall guy. How tall are you?
I'm 6'10". I was in high school, entered high school about 6'2".
Wow.
And in my sophomore and senior year, my mother worked in the mill and she had to tailor my clothes. She wanted me to have tailored clothes.
Wow.
And so, bless her heart, she worked with that. And
You kept her busy trying to tailor your clothes the way you were growing.
well, and on the baseball team, they had the long socks at that time.
Right.
And they couldn't find a uniform to fit me. So they had to special make me a uniform to fit down over my socks because they required it to be a pitcher.
Yeah.
And I was about 15, 16 toward my sophomore year and pitched baseball in high school. And I would come up with 1 to 3 no-hitters each year.
Okay.
And of course in March it was pretty cold here in Carolina, and it would make me sore all over, but I'd come up with that. And then
What time frame was this? Like, was it?
that was starting my sophomore year.
So that would have been what year around?
Ooh, that was 1948,
Okay.
47. But
Gotcha.
I finished high school in 53, so I may get the numbers a little wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Around
But
late 40s, early 50s. Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, and I didn't care much for basketball at the time.
Was that always the least favorite of the 3 sports if you're looking at football, baseball, and basketball?
Yeah, we had the big thing was to wear the sweater with the letter on it.
Yeah.
And have the three sports, football and baseball and basketball. So how I got started, I'll never understand, because my dad or my mother, I think my mother played basketball.
Okay.
When you jump the ball and you played and then you go back to the center and jump again.
Right.
And so she insists that I stay with it, and I did so until I got through the high school. And out of high school, I was picked up by 4 or 5 farm clubs.
Okay.
And one of my favorite teams at the time in the National League was the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Right.
And then they shipped out west.
Right.
But I would follow them along. And I was a newspaper boy in town in the morning paper from 8th grade to my senior year. And I would look in that paper first thing in the morning to see how the Dodgers did.
Right.
And my running mate, one of my friends in the school, he was a St. Louis Cardinal.
Right.
So we'd have these big arguments about these kind of things. But everything I owned had my pencils, my pen, my notebook, had Dodgers all over.
Right.
And so I went from in 11th grade, 2 schools started visiting me, North Carolina University and Wake Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the Wake Forest coach at that time in the old Wake Forest said that he didn't care whether I could play basketball or not, he just wanted me to walk around on campus because of my height. So I always got a lot of kidding over my height, but I was never self-conscious of it.
I was going to ask you if you were or not.
No, I was never bothered by it, and I went through the years of answering my height up sometimes till 5 times a day.
Wow.
And a lot of people didn't know my name. They just knew me by the tall man.
Right.
But anyway, I was picked up by a group that were from the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
Our school burned down the first day of '53. So we ended up in the next door school in the basement to finish our senior year.
Wow.
With 36 people in the class. And so he insisted on leaving me baseballs with the Pirates' name on it.
Right.
And so when I got to be a senior, I had to make some choices. And fortunately, I had several of them because there wasn't any tall athletes around at that time.
Right.
And I was getting all the recognition from the Greensboro Daily Paper.
Right.
That's one I delivered. And,
Gotcha. Local hero.
and then when I got to the baseball field, it was, I went to work in the summer. I was going to work this job in the mill, my hometown, and we didn't have a phone in the house, but someone called me or called the people that lived in town, and they of course knew me, and they came and rounded me up and had me answer the phone, and they asked me to go to Conway, North Carolina, near the Virginia line. And they were going to house me and feed me and put me on the baseball field. So I went there and pitched a season of baseball. In the meantime, Atlantic Christian, they stayed right after me, pretty regular, and finally won over because my school that I wanted to attend was Appalachian in Boone, North Carolina. And I went there and stayed 2 weeks in a spring workout, with basketball. And the principal called and said I had to graduate from high school before I go to college.
Details.
So anyway,
Had to come back.
I made up my mind. I decided I'd go to Atlantic Christian College because I'd rather be a big fish in the little sea rather than the little fish in there. Yeah, see. So I went to Atlantic Christian. My first year, they had never been to the tournament. They were an odd team in their conference at the time, which was called North State Conference, I believe. And so they wanted to, if I lose train of thought, they wanted me down there, and I knew that I could play senior ball rather than JV, because the Big Four, you call it here in Carolina, was they were JV the first year regardless.
Right.
And
right.
so I went into Atlantic Christian College.
So had Atlantic Christian been losing? Were they like? I know you said they were kind of like an odd team out. Had they been losing? Did they have a losing history? Or?
They'd lose and never go to the tournament.
Yeah. Okay.
And they had a football team, but they canceled it out the year before I went there.
Okay.
The first year I was there, we came out runners up for the championship.
Wow.
We played in the tournament and we came out in fourth in the lineup standings, but we won we were runners up and against East Carolina College,
Yeah.
which is university now.
Yeah.
But so the second year we won it with that was my sophomore year, and in the freshman year the lane was 6 feet wide under the basket.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved it to 12 feet at that time. That was the change in basketball at that particular time. They moved it to 12 feet. So the senior year, and that's the year that we won the championship, we went on to win the district in the NAIA, and that took us to Kansas City.
Wow.
And we eliminated the University of Indiana. They were 4 seeded, we weren't seeded.
Nice.
And one of my real interests is after that particular ball game was Mr. Basketball, which was George Mikan.
Oh yeah.
You remember
I
him?
do remember him. Yeah.
Well,
I actually had his basketball card. These are these weird, tall, skinny basketball cards. I had hardly any. I collected all baseball, but I had a George Mikan.
well,
Sure did.
George interviewed me on radio.
Wow.
And told me if I'd keep picking up that the big teams would be looking for me when I got out of school.
Right.
And so we came into Arkansas the second game, and they bumped us off.
Okay.
We had, they were 3 of us on the team that hit in double figures all the time, and all 3 of us didn't get out of single figures that evening.
Wow.
And they picked us off.
Yeah.
And, so they were about like we were. We came in with nothing and knocked off the big dog.
Yeah.
And so then after that, I went on to play the next couple of years, and I had a lot of awards from that, in the scoring and making the teams.
Right.
I was 4 years all tournament, 4 years all conference, and then I went on to be first team with the district and NAIA, and
there's a picture of you during your playing days, right?
yeah, that was I'm not sure what year that was. It might have been the first year.
Wow.
But
So I'm guessing they parked you under the basket and fed the ball to you.
yeah. you couldn't dunk the ball during
Right,
those
because
days.
everything had to be
You
like
could in
layup.
warm up, but
Right,
you couldn't dunk it any other time.
right.
And so when we warm up, but I went from there to my senior year. What happened to me? They were keeping statistics on me, and I was a leading rebounder in the nation at that time.
Wow.
And because I tapped the ball sometimes 3 or 4 times on the
Right.
sides of the basket,
Right.
they wouldn't give me credit for that rebound. So the statistic people came in from the national conference out there and eliminated my record. This kid from Mexico then took the record.
Wow.
But my count was like 24.8 at that time.
Wow.
I still remember it. Oh,
Yeah.
that
I
wasn't
would
bad.
remember that. I would remember that too if I'd ever done
Oh,
that.
yeah, I thought I'd better remember that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But anyway, then I got a letter from Boston Celtics.
Okay.
And the Celtics had Cousy and Russell and a national winner
Right.
in pro ball. And so I thought, well, I may not even be able to take them water to the bench, you know. So then comes along the Knicks.
Right.
New York Knicks came to the last tournament I played in my senior year. We lost the finals in that senior year at the tournament, and the Knicks came into the locker room, and everyone got all excited because they were professional people in there,
Oh yeah.
and they were looking for me, and I didn't like being in the limelight so much, and I was kind of in the back room. I was a little depressed because it's my last game.
Yeah.
And they came in, but Fuzzy McLean was the coach at that particular time. And so they wanted me to attend. Back then you had to go to these training camps off campus.
Right.
And I had to go to Kentucky, and I can't remember the name of that town I went to. I went to Kentucky, worked out, and he had all these ball players up there, and I was like an inch taller, but they were about 50 to 25 pounds heavier than I was. So my playing weight was only 220.
Okay.
And so,
Which on that height is pretty. It's pretty small.
yeah, and they moved me around quite a bit. And I got one trip to Madison Square Garden to work out, you know, and
Right.
and be honest, I didn't particularly care for New York really, and
Right.
but
You mean the city itself, or where you were playing, or?
well, I was going there. They were working me, and they took one kid from NC State and one from Lenoir-Rhyne in the conference I was playing in. There were only 2 of us in the NAIA.
Right.
And that was the Wales that played with Lenoir-Rhyne.
Okay.
And I think this guy was, I'm not sure, it was Ronnie Shavlik. His name was quite popular.
Yeah. I remember him too. I'm a big State fan, so I
But
remember
they
him.
sent him on too.
Yeah.
And then the other kid was at Carolina, Lenny Rosenbluth.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I do. So I'm a State fan, but I grew up in a family of Carolina fans. I'm the
Well-
only State fan in the family, so I know the main guys from both teams all the way through.
Yeah. Well, my doctor was a graduate from Carolina,
Right.
and he wouldn't charge my mother to treat me. He wanted me in Carolina, and I turned it on him, but he didn't lose
Yeah.
interest in me.
He probably did okay anyway. as a doctor.
Yeah, Lenny Rosenbluth, and then the other kid that went to Wake Forest, he got the same treatment at Appalachian that I did.
Mhm.
The coach up there, he was not giving us any treat, to
Yeah.
come to school. He wasn't telling us he's gonna give us this or that.
Right.
And so, and he was a good friend. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah.
He was we were all listed all-staters in that year
Wow.
here in the state of North Carolina.
Right.
In 55, I was listed the tallest, the tallest athlete in the state of North Carolina.
Wow.
However, state had Sykes,
Uh-huh.
and Sykes was an inch taller than I was, but they cut him out.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he was very big kid,
Right.
and his glands killed him at 35.
Wow.
But he was at state because
Yeah.
I was with Case. I had a friend, or not a friend, but acquaintance that would come by and take me to state in my junior year,
Right.
and I'd sit with Case in the bleachers
Yeah.
while he was coaching his team.
Yeah.
And I
He's a
followed
legend.
state quite a bit.
Yeah.
They
He's a
were
legend.
really,
They set the pace
top
for
of the
everything
dog.
for a while.
and then they had the tournament in the field house there.
Right.
Was popular. People
Yeah.
closed their business to go.
Yeah. Was that the Dixie Classic?
Uh,
Or are you just talking about so then they used to do the Dixie Classic. I think was that the four big four teams?
yeah, they would invite 4 in,
Yeah.
and that was
But then they would host it and then they
Yeah.
would have
and Bevo Francis was popular.
heard the name.
Yeah, and I heard the name too,
Yeah.
and
What
then they
stands
put
out?
it in my middle name,
No way,
and
really?
I didn't appreciate it. I said,
Yeah. I'm not sure if I like
call
that.
me John Bevo, and because he was about 6'9", but
Right.
he never got into pro ball, and a lot of us
Well,
at that time.
I think it's crazy if you think about how select there's not very many people that are playing, certainly like on the basketball team, there's not very many people, how hard it is to be somebody who gets to that level, who's good enough. When you watch them on TV, you forget what it takes to get there, how much you have to stand out just to even get there, and all the really good ones who don't make it,
Well, I just kind of lost interest and wanted to send me to Florida for a season and cut my salary in half, and so I decided I didn't want to go to Florida,
Okay.
and so I came back, went to my hometown, and got married, and we had 3 kids, and I decided that I didn't want to stay in Carolina. I coached 4 years in Carolina,
Right.
and I never coached baseball or basketball. I had a
Right.
girls team in high school,
Yeah.
and I had an 8-man football team because they didn't
Wow.
have enough to play.
Right.
And so I went to the school and met a recruiter from up in the Maryland area, up in Virginia.
Right.
And I went to Virginia for an interview, ended up in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I was a counselor and an administrator. I went to George Washington University, got another degree.
Wow.
And I was administrator and counselor in Montgomery County for 32 years. And that's
Wow.
where I retired from.
Wow. That's awesome.
So that was my round trip.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you spending time talking to me about this. I could talk to you about this for hours. We'll have to do this again, either for another version of this or maybe just off camera, either one.
Well, I said I have to say I and we because, I'm talking about myself.
That's okay. Well, we've got, and this is the Athletic Hall of Fame for Atlantic Christian College plaque that you got for being inducted into that. And then this was your baseball picture.
Yeah, can you tell which one's me?
Yeah, I think so. I'm guessing you're the tall guy in the middle. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate the time. And like I said, hopefully we can do another one of these. sometime soon. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Well, I thank you very much for having me.
All right.
And